Welcome to the Cabana Conspiracy Club. I'm your host Adam, joined by my co-hosts
Matthew
and Andrew,
and we're here to talk conspiracies. This week, it's Harold Holt.
So who was Harold Holt?
Who was Harold Holt? I didn't know much about him before coming along and getting started here. Found out, as Adam said, he was the 17th Prime Minister of Australia. He was instrumental in the transitioning of Australia over the decimal currency system.
Which would make a lot of enemies.
Yeah, he would do. He oversaw that, or wrote it up as Treasurer, which I believe he was Treasurer between November 58 and when did that run till?
January 1966, almost a decade of counting coins.
Oh, yeah. What a guy, hey? What a guy. He then oversaw the transition once he finally made it into the top job in Australia. Continued to see the transition into this new world of having a currency system that makes sense. And
literally makes sense.
I'm here all week, guys. I'm here all week. And he also liked the ladies a little bit.
What did he ever?
Not necessarily his wife, although I think he did like her.
I think he liked the way she let him get away with whatever he wanted to.
I think so. From all reports, she was a lovely lady too.
I've got some information on that to come later on. Some juicy tidbits. You can call me Scoops McGee because they're coming in hot and fast.
Well,
his dissolution of the White Australia policy or program probably didn't help him create too many friends as well.
Onshore and offshore.
Yeah. He did seem to have one friend that he really got along well with. He went so far as to make a campaign slogan for somebody who didn't even come from this fucking country with all the way with LBJ. Get into Vietnam, kids, all the way with LBJ. He loved him some Lyndon Johnson.
In retrospect, he probably wasn't on the right page with that gusto.
No, I don't think he was somehow. But he really loved Lyndon Johnson. I don't know why. Because I don't even think... I can't even remember her name. We'll put it on the screen now what her name was because I can't remember it. But his wife had a really weird name.
Was it Zara?
It was like a bird or it's like an animal name. Something really, really weird.
Well, I think we're going to establish that he was a womanizer and enjoyed the fairer sex. And maybe when he heard that there's about this person, Lyndon Johnson, he thought it was a lady and became infatuated.
He wanted to go all the way
with
LBJ.
Could quite possibly be it. I know.
No disrespect to the man, of course.
Of course. He was actually regarded in Australia in the same way JFK was regarded in America. As, that ladies' man, that Lothario, kind of almost a sex symbol, as it were. The 60s was a really weird time because these dudes who had weird faces, just sex symbols. I
don't think there's anything weird about his face. He was a very handsome man.
Oh, easy. No, Don Dunstan.
I'll go out there and say that. I'm comfortable enough with who I am. He was a handsome fellow, and I'm sad that he's gone.
Well, I think he got taken before he had a chance to really do much of anything, and I guess that's an overview of how Holt was. You mentioned he probably made some enemies with some of his policies. We'll get into some of that, but let's get into the disappearance of Harold Holt. Alright, so like I say, it's the 17th of December. It's been a long day for Harold. He's been prime ministering, he's been hanging out with his family on the beach, he's been hanging out with his mistress. He's just been living life up. And it's got to the end of the day, and apparently, guys, Harold Holt had a bit of a sore shoulder on that day. So not 100% efficiency. Don't know how he popped the shoulder out. Anybody guess there? But I guess I'm going with sex swing myself. That's my guess. Is an errant sex swing. I mean, a 60s sex swing would not have been compliant with safety regulations.
No.
So
I think they called it the Harold Halter.
They quite well have.
If they didn't, they should have. They should have.
Somebody needs to make those right now. But anyway, so he hurt his shoulder, but he still liked to go for swims. Harold Holt loved to swim in the ocean.
Skin diver.
Yeah. Loved it. Loved to put his Speedos on and his little rock shoes and just bugger off into the surf. So anyway, on this night in question, he's hanging out with one of his mates, and it's getting a bit choppy in the sea, bit riptide in places, bit overcast, and his mate goes, "Harold, I've had a gutful, mate. I'm packing it in." Harold's the Prime Minister, and he's all like, "Well, you can piss off, mate. I'm going out in me water, eh?" And he gets in there, puts his shoes on, probably does the Velcro up, and buggers off out to sea. And his mate says that is the last he ever sees, and anybody ever sees, of Harold Holt. Now, an inquest would obviously begin. However, under Australian law at the time, you can't actually do a coroner's inquest unless you have a body, so it gets held up. And they search for 22 days. And they find not only no trace of Harold Holt, they find no trace of anything. Like, anything. It is literally like the dude just vanished off the planet. Okay, so obviously speculation begins, right? Now, the first most obvious two things people speculate on this are drowning or sharks. So,
It is Australia.
It's Australia.
It's Australia.
It's Australia, mate.
Australia.
So, the local Coast Guards, or whatever, like, it's a big search. It's our Prime Minister. So, yeah, all hands on deck on this one. You know?
Prime Minister going missing during term.
Yeah.
It's not like he's an ex-Prime Minister or a head politician just going missing.
He's only, what, was he even 2 years into his term at this point?
Not quite 2 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's not even halfway through.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. So everybody's looking for this guy.
I mean, if you put it into context for someone who doesn't understand what a Prime Minister is, it's like Obama, going out to play Pokemon Go and then never coming back.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we'll go one better because it's America. Obama gets on a Black Hawk. The Black Hawk takes off and then just fucking vanishes. That is this situation. Where people are going, yeah, we watched him get on the helicopter and the helicopter flew away.
He needed to get that Pikachu.
Exactly. Should have used the drone. But, so, the search begins. And obviously, they search in the water first and foremost. That's where he's last seen. So, like I say, prevailing theory, it's a shark. Hey, guess what we found in the water right nearby? Bugger off big ass shark. Pull it out of the water, cut it open. Is Harold Holt inside it, do you think?
No.
No, or else we've been sitting having this conversation. It'd be a very short show. No, nothing inside the shark. Nothing inside the reefs. There's nothing anywhere of this guy. Which obviously breeds conspiracy theories. So we'll put those two aside for the moment. And we'll jump into... I will give you an overview now of the conspiracy theories. And we'll start dissecting them. Conspiracy theory number 1. This one came out in the 80s in a book that I'm not even going to bother remembering the name of because it's ridiculous. And that is that Harold Holt, and if we can just change the backdrop momentarily to a topographical map of Australia. Alright, now if you look at this dot right here, that's where Harold Holt disappeared. Now, this bloke says that Harold Holt was taken away by a submarine that was waiting just outside Port Phillip Bay, which is right there. Now, if I can just get an Indiana Jones-like dash representation line, thank you very much. That's how far he swam to get to this submarine in just his jocks and his rock shoes.
Well, he was a good swimmer.
With a Dodge shoulder.
Was it really a Dodge shoulder?
Well, it could have been a cover-up. The alleged story here is that he goes to this submarine because Harold Holt was a spy for China. Now, gentlemen.
Wow.
I know I'm the pro-conspiracy part of this show. That's my job in this seat, in the pro-conspiracy hot seat. But this one's fucking ridiculous.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy indeed. It's one of the first ones I heard about when I started looking into this. All these talks.
That's what everybody seems to say. If you say, I'm doing speaking of Harold Holt,
Oh,
submarine!
yeah. Pygmy submarines, the stellium and all this stuff. But I really don't buy that it was in leagues of China.
Doesn't make any sense.
I don't know how that works.
No, do what? No. Kevin Rudd in a current political climate would make sense if you said that. You'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. The guy's always there. But this is Harold Holt, who's just like, I'm happy to be in Australia and swim. Like he's got nothing tying him to China.
Yeah, I love this theory. It's if any of the theories that we're going to go through could be true, this is the one that I want to see a movie of. It's the one that it's sexy. He's a spy. It plays on the prevailing fear at the time of like communism and or just there has to be a bad guy. We have to blame someone. It was a Chinese submarine, but then you look at it with a thinking cap on, and
bit of logic.
Submarines, just the vehicle of submarine, or automatically holds a mystery and spy and sneakiness about it. And as Australians, we have a fear, or not a fear, but we have already been told lots of stories, particularly of midget submarines, based on Japanese raids during World War II. So as soon as someone says it was a midget submarine, you straight away we're switched on and we're saying, yeah, it was sneaky
Those
bastards.
types.
Yeah, but 1960s records of the Chinese army are quite and navy are quite comprehensive, and they have almost no submarines, let alone no midget submarines on any naval register. They have no motherships active that could control or deposit freighters that would be able to use and service those vehicles, and it very quickly falls apart. And even if it was just a normal submarine, why did it have to be a submarine? Why couldn't it just be a Chinese boat? Why? Yeah, and
because they had to get out undetected.
Well, okay, cool.
Yeah, like I said, this conspiracy theory doesn't hold water at all.
No,
if
well,
pardon the pun,
yeah.
considering it's a submarine. But yeah, it sinks pretty fast. Like I said, the topical map shows pretty quickly that
it's a long swim
with a dodge shuttle.
And again, I wasn't aware of the distances before looking into this. I thought this made a fair bit of sense. Like, yeah, maybe he was a spy. I can't see when in his tenure as a senior politician he had the chance to run away and
Start spy game.
Start a clandestine spy game running around in China. I mean, he got his senior major portfolio was in 1949, and since that point, there's pretty clear records of where he is on what day, doing what. I mean, he's a major politician. They don't just let you run around and not tell people where you are.
No, exactly.
I mean, yeah, maybe these records are falsified at some point. But yeah, he was definitely at my house. We're having a drink.
Yeah.
It was fine. He wasn't gone at all. But you're right. The distances don't hold up. There's too many things in this one that just
don't pull together. Yeah.
No. The face of it seems more reasonable, but then it just does not hold up to any sort of scrutiny.
No, I'd say it's a sieve. It's a sieve.
Yeah, it's a story that plays on the fears or what would be exciting at the time, but
the irrational.
I think that's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself in the mindset of the public at the time, what they want to hear. And as with a lot of conspiracy theories, they make sense at the front, but they play on what people want to hear and what they want to believe. And submarines are cool.
Submarines are cool.
They can shoot torpedoes, they go underwater, and then they can come up the top.
Yeah.
And plus, it's the Bond era as well, so people love that sort of shit.
Yeah.
It's got to be, like you said, there's got to be a villain. Let's move on to the next theory then. Next theory is he was picked up by a UFO. Now, obviously, a bit harder to prove than the Chinese submarines. We don't actually have the records of the UFOs, flight paths for that night.
I think that's proof enough in and of itself. Clearly a cover-up.
Yeah.
Not even any records.
But look,
if we had flight records for UFOs, they wouldn't be used. They'd just be FOs.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw something out there. majority of the UFO stuff that got spotted in America, pretty clearly US military or CIA stuff. So if there was a UFO that picked him up, it's going to be the CIA. And yeah, they at this time, I just don't see the CIA doing something like that. The CIA at this time in the world are very, very focused on like the fact they just helped kill Kennedy. So that is their biggest priority. Is because
they can't let people find that out yet.
No, exactly. We can't find that out until actually like. Is it 18 months from now? We're going to finally get the redacted document that is going to be so fucking like 3 words be legible out of just black scroll of ink, but still.
We did.
Yeah. It was John. But yeah, so this one's even more ridiculous because, okay, so in theory, aliens either by random chance, now this is like the random chance of somebody goes missing after, like, Andrew threatens to kill you, Matt, and you go missing the next day, but it's actually a serial killer who took you and killed you, and he's innocent, it just looks like he did it, right? This UFO thing is that kind of a scenario where it's like, well, he got picked up, but, like, it didn't, but, you know what I mean? There's no logic to it, and you have to have the happenstance of the fact these UFOs just happen to pick up a dude who happens to be the Prime Minister through happen chance out of the claw machine. The claw machine happened to grab the Prime Minister toy and drop it down.
Because this is the 60s, so it's got to be a 60s UFO.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of those ones like the cool dome and all the smooth edges and stuff.
So it just happens by chance to grab the most important person in the country at that time. That's if you go with the chance scenario. The other scenario is they took him for a reason. Well, the only reason you would take a world leader is to do some sort of domination plan or just something along those sort of lines. So why is it like ransom something? So what point is there in kidnapping this dude if you're a UFO? What do you gain out of this? What are you going to take him back to your planet so that he can teach you the decimal currency? Like what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe the reason these other beings went out into the stars is because of a crippling economic situation that they've found themselves in, and they need a way to regulate the transfer of goods.
They're still on the sterling.
Of goods and services, and then, how can we do this? I'll give you 2 hogsheads to the gallon, 5 rods to the kilometre. Maybe. But no.
I don't think so. Look, Andrew, you are meant to be the man who is completely anti the conspiracy here. What do you got to say about aliens on this one?
Well,
apart from Welcome to Earth.
Maybe there was aliens, and maybe they picked him up by chance, and they said, "Take me to your leader," and he was just like, popped his collar.
Your lucky day, buddy.
Well, he went to pop his collar, then he realised he was like in his swim attire.
So he just popped his toggle.
Yeah, popped his toggle, and was like, I can sleep with that one, and they went off star fucking.
Maybe that's what it was, that he was. JFK is dead at this time. Yeah. So the world's greatest womanizer is gone. Harold Holt is like the second in command of womanizing at the time. These aliens need to repopulate, so like we need the human who fucks the most.
And also has the largest reservoir of sexually transmitted diseases in their system already. Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Allegedly.
Well, let's be very careful here. Let's say they did take him on purpose. They took him. They said, this guy seems pretty important. They've been watching us. They go, Australia, that's a huge landmass. That must be really important on this planet.
It's the size of the moon.
It's really big.
Legitimately.
Wow, there you go.
The diameter of Australia is bigger than the diameter of the moon.
Knowledge is power.
True story.
Every planet in the solar system can fit in between the Earth and the moon.
Yeah.
Crazy. But maybe the aliens saw it and they go, yeah, Australia's really important. It's clearly very big. This guy, he's in charge. He's going to know what's what. They get him. Turns out to be a top bloke. They just have a chat and leave.
It's just like, I'll just go with you.
Yeah, just hang out.
I want to see where you're from. And it's really far away. And he's just not back yet.
Actually, that could be valid. He could be onto something. It could also be the fact that, like, he's Australian. Let's be real. It's Australia in the 60s. I'm willing to bet you like to drink. Maybe he got up there and they were all like, you ever tried Romulan ale? And he was like, that's banned. Have you not watched Star Trek 6? That's banned. But
have a gin and tonics.
Yeah.
I've got 5 different types.
and so he had one of their drinks and he was like, I can never go back.
Yeah.
Keep me in a zoo if you have to. I'm just not going home.
Maybe they're scared of us because we're breathing a toxic rocket fuel.
That's true.
And we're currently on fire in our lungs. We've got bones sticking out of our mouths.
Why would you abduct him then?
Yeah.
They picked him up.
By
went,
accident?
Oh
or-
shit! This is pretty full on. We need to find out about
but
these
what-
animal creatures.
But let's be real. If you go to the pound and you get a dog and you bring it home and it like eats your fucking face, right? You're gonna kick it out the front door. You're gonna be like, get out of
What?
here, you mangy piece of shit. So if you're on a UFO and this dude gets on who just won't stop humping everything and drinking all your synthahol, you're gonna be like, right, just drop him off, get out of here,
Yeah.
you bastard. But surely we would have found him if that had happened by now.
Of all life,
Blokes
in
just
the,
don't fall out of the sky.
all life in the galaxy is predominantly, say, plant-based.
Yeah.
They come to this planet, they see all these animal creatures. Go, what's all this about? They find this guy. Yeah, he humps everything. They don't know what humping is. They're plants. So, oh, here, have some pollen.
Yeah.
Yeah, have some asexual reproduction.
But if you're watching the human race, let's be real. Let's get meta for a minute here.
Mhm.
We're on the internet.
Mhm.
If you're watching the human race and you go, okay, what's the most important thing on Earth? The answer's going to be this. That's right, it's a cat.
Did Harold Holt have a cat?
Not with him when he was swimming, I know now, there's a story I would like. There's your movie. Harold Holt and his buddy cat who likes to swim,
Yeah.
swim out into the ocean. They get taken in by the Chinese submarine, become double agents, and in fact, all this time, Harold Holt was secretly Kim Jong-il.
And then he's abducted by aliens.
I think we have more evidence that happened than he was just abducted by a UFO.
Well, should we move on to the
Just
next
as
one?
likely.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right, the next one, obviously, as I said earlier, is the shark.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not the shark they found. Obviously, that one didn't have it in his stomach. But believe it or not, guys, I've done some research on this. I hit the interwebs earlier, bit of Googling, bit of Googsing.
They've got that on computers now.
Yeah, they do. I even used my phone earlier. I was taking a shit and I was looking it up. That's how dedicated I am to this.
Have you tried Bing? Bing's pretty good.
Get out.
Yeah.
And
I just asked Jeeves. He told me where it was all at.
but GeoCities really helped me out, and I'll tell you, I found out something I didn't know before today.
About sharks.
There's more than one shark in Australia.
Yes.
Hang on.
Yeah, wrinkled your brain,
Can you
mate. I know.
just start that bit again?
So hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
What the story behind this conspiracy theory is, and it's a conspiracy theory really against the ocean when you look at it. But this conspiracy theory goes that Harold Holt went out to sea and got eaten by a shark.
Okay,
But
that
it wasn't
happens,
the
right?
shark they found in the search. It was a different. So Joe the shark they found was just minding his own business, swimming through the shit,
Doing
through the
sharky
sea.
things.
Yeah, when Sean ate Harold Holt, but Sean went right, and Joe went left, and the boat was to the left. So they took Joe, and Sean just buggered off into the sea to continue his serial killing ways.
He's all full up. He doesn't need to eat right now. He doesn't need to hang around and keep
Well,
looking
not
for
for
swimmers.
now, but
Yeah.
but rumor is that
Rumours.
rumor has it that shark went on to become Jaws. So I mean, I can't clarify these
Well,
rumors.
Jaws was pretty big.
He
So
had to be pretty big to be Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And your ego would grow after that. The amount of nutrients you would get off a Harold Holt, I would think, would make you bigger, like some sort of toxic
he's
radiation.
lived off his charisma.
Yeah, so that's what I've heard. I put in a call. I did put in a call to Steven Spielberg, like a good journalist, but unfortunately he hasn't returned it yet. So still waiting on that one.
Well, do you have anything to add in there? First?
I'm just curious about this one. I mean, you mentioned they found the shark.
Yeah.
Cut it open because it's a shark. Maybe this guy. Do you walk down the street and go, maybe you murdered him? Let's grab you.
I think it got
maybe
to the
you
point
murdered
where
him. Let's grab you.
It was around, say, day 15, and literally they're like, this fucker is gone.
Yeah.
So they were just like, we got to do something. They had to do some sort of I honestly
That
think
might
it
have
was
been
a
more of a
publicity stunt.
saving face.
I think it was a publicity stunt where it's like, we've got to do something. Fuck it, there is a shark there. Let's just try it. Worst case scenario, we look like we're trying every avenue.
How long do sharks take to digest a person?
It would really depend on what type of shark, how much they ate, and if he.
So the type of shark that they found,
And
and a person the size of Harold Holt.
Yeah,
What wouldn't digest in their stomach though, and what would have been in there? The shoes and the old budgie
The
smugglers.
shoes fell off.
I
But
think
rock shoes are made not to fall off in the water.
Yeah, but your feet are made not to fall off. But when you're getting eaten by a
Yeah.
shark, that tends to happen.
Okay, well we'll get to the shoes then later. Why weren't the old budgie smugs in there?
Because off over there somewhere.
Why weren't any remains in that particular shark? It's pretty obvious that it wasn't the shark involved. If there was a shark involved, the shark...
Allegedly, if there was a shark involved.
I think, as often happens, particularly in Australia, when someone is taken by a shark, because it happens often, or is attacked, then the Coast Guard or whatever goes out and they try and find a perpetrator and bring it to justice, and then at least they can quell the public uproar that beaches aren't safe, it's okay, they're slightly safer, we killed a shark. Like what's happening off the coast of Western Australia at the moment with drum lines. Don't do that. You're not avenging the death or taking that shark that killed him potentially away.
Here's the other thing that I just like. You're right. We get a lot of shark attacks here in Australia, but you know what we don't get? A lot of sharks eating humans because they generally bite us and go, "Fuck that! That tastes like shit."
And it fights back.
It's too big.
But it's a good story.
Yeah, it's not like a snake. A shark isn't like a snake where it just goes and just like engulfs the thing. It needs to fucking bite. The minute it gets the blood of a human, it's just like nah. It's like spraying citrus in
That's
the cat's face.
not a seal.
Yeah.
I thought that was a seal.
This is warm-blooded. That's fucked.
I don't think there's definitely no evidence that he was taken by a shark, but that's because they didn't collect evidence. The shark that they paraded about is most likely not the shark that was involved if there was a shark involved.
Well, let's get off the fence on this one right now. We can go back and cover the other ones in a minute, but I want off the fence on the shark right now.
Yep.
Do any of you, any of us, anyone in this room actually think it's possible that a shark took him?
I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon out of all the list of stuff that's going on, I reckon eaten by a shark, either partially or wholly, is most likely.
Okay.
But as you said, they didn't collect the evidence, so we can't prove that happened. They didn't find any. You don't always find remains. The ocean is very big.
The ocean is very big, but where he went, well, it's not like he went in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. He went in an area that isn't like it's not so. It's an area you can go like snorkeling in. So it's so deep. It's not deep enough that you need an oxygen fucking mask to get down. You know what I mean? So in that amount of water, this is my only argument with the shark theory. In that amount of water, if it ate like a snake, yeah, sure, no worries, a shark took him. But in that amount of water, where a shark is biting and there's coral and that sort of shit, you would find a piece of fabric, you would find a shoe, you would find a bone, you would find a piece of flesh, you would find something.
I don't think marine biologists would agree too much with that assumption.
Okay, go ahead.
Coral reefs are very good at catching things as well, but they have a very diverse ecosystem, and there would be like crabs. What do crabs eat? They don't go out hunting fish. They're scavengers. If something falls to the bottom of the ocean floor eventually, in a life-rich environment like that, it's not going to hang around for long. No. That's if the body did hang around. I don't think it did. Tides go in, tides go out. It's dumb luck that you didn't find.
With tides going in and tides going out, particularly in like forensics and bodies and things, and this one I'm basing on is just the information I've read on what happens when a body is in the water and it dies a certain way out. And there is a certain distance. Once you get out a certain distance, your body will just fucking float till it sinks. Or we float though. That's the one thing you can say about humans. We float.
We float when all of our body parts are together and there's still lung inside of our
You're still
lungs.
floating two halves.
Yeah, but if you jump
by
a shark, maybe.
But so a body floats, and usually within a certain amount of distance, whatever goes out will come back in. Even if it's just clothing and shit, it will come back in. Like we're in South Australia. What was it? 2-3 months ago, somebody died off the cliffs at Glenelg. It was because they dove in, got washed out.
It was like a young kid, I think.
And the clothing started coming in before the kid. And then the kid washed back in. Right? We would see, if he's got bitten by a shark, unless the shark is literally fucking Sharknado bitten him in half, it's a superficial wound is the first hit. Because the first hit is the controlling grab hit. Right? So you're looking at a superficial wound, maybe taking a leg off. Let's go extreme, it's taking a leg off. Right? The rest of that body is he'll die, he'll bleed out, but the rest of that body is still going to be there. The pieces are still going to be there. It should have floated back to some degree. Something should have floated back to some degree.
Do we have prevailing maps of currents of the Portsea area?
For that time, I don't. I imagine there might
Well,
be.
currents are seasonal. So if we have current maps, then you should be able to extrapolate it backwards to the late 60s.
I'll give you that. Yeah. But my only counter argument to that would be the search for this dude started like within a few hours of his disappearance. So even if the currents are going in and out, like that, like as I say, this isn't just a search party of 20 people with a dog. This is a fuck off, all hands on deck search.
50 years ago, though.
Yeah, but a body floats the same way now as it does 50 years ago.
Oh yeah, my point was search and rescue response 50 years ago is not like what we expect now with, you know, the news helicopters all jumping into the air and like a million boats being out there.
I'll give you that, but we're talking about an area that it's not... As I say, the area he went in, it's just not conducive to just... I don't know, I guess my problem with this, the hole in this theory for me is that, yeah, theoretically you can get eaten by a shark, you can sink to the bottom, you can get eaten and all that sort of shit, right? But it's been 50 years. We've found shipwrecks. We've found pieces of clothing from people who disappeared before and since that sort of time.
He wasn't wearing any clothes.
He was wearing his shoes though. His shoes are the one thing that would survive for a while. They're made to survive in that environment, and they're not going to be eaten by anything. And if they are, they're just going to be shitted out.
But don't you think lots of shoes wash up on beaches all the time, and they're often just rubbish because they do survive?
Quite possibly, but
so I think it's likely that the shoes have washed up, but they're
no one cares.
No one cares. It's not regarded as, oh, this could be Harold Holt's shoe 50 years later, or even a year later, as more like, it's another shoe.
Quite possibly.
It's like the like often you see in cartoons or whatever, like where someone goes fishing and the first thing they pull out is a boot.
Yeah, the boot or a towel.
Harold Holt's boot. Yeah.
Quite possibly.
The kitchen sink.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Look, I personally think, and we'll move now to the next one. Move on to the one that's my personal favourite before we move on. Well, this one ties into. There's two that are pretty much on par with each other. Okay, and one he lives and one he dies.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Harold Holt's womanizing. Okay, now Harold Holt's wife was quoted directly as saying he was having affairs everywhere. That's how she described his life. He was having affairs everywhere. She talked about going to the beach earlier that day with his number one mistress, Marjorie Gillespie, spending time with her. She and Harold went off and spent time together alone. And her comment when she was asked about it was, well, I married him. I knew what I married into. I knew what he was like. I learnt to live with it. But I felt like she made comments along the lines of, I felt like laughing and going to this girl and saying, you do realise that you are just one of many, right? Which tells you how...
Allegedly many.
Well, yeah.
She's the only one that was ever confirmed, approved, and by her own admission, she came and said, yes, it was me.
And I don't think she really had a choice because she was one of the last people seen with the only Prime Minister we've ever had die in office. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, there are legends, but.
No disrespect to his memory.
I'm not disrespecting anybody's memory or anything like that. But when men in powerful positions like that philander, they generally don't just go, I'll just have one. You know, there is generally, and this is the height of the booming sexual period of the 60s. I mean, think about it. Literally, I dare you to pick up a phone book from the 60s. You'd probably open it to any page, just go bang, and you'd be within 3 names of somebody JFK banged. It's a better 2 degrees of JFK replaces 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Right? That's the climate we're in. And this guy is a sexy man who is super powerful at a time when Sean Connery is the poster boy for sex symbols. Right? So he's got that kind of an air about him. So I don't think it's just one.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because some of the stuff I read said that the public at the time and other politicians as well considered him to be fairly boring and plain as a person. Yet his private life seems to have been
But maybe that's a
very
balancing
exciting.
thing.
Yeah, maybe.
I read it.
Maybe you just end up being plain and boring for doing, was it 18 years of being treasurer? Or 10 years
Being a
or whatever
money
it was.
man would
Yeah.
make you somewhat dull and boring. But there's a psychological study that came out recently that talked about risk in people's lives and how you get used to a certain amount of risk in your life. Everybody does. And it can grow, it can exponentially increase. It can decrease, but usually it doesn't by much. But basically, you get used to having a certain level of oddity in your life, right? And danger in your life, if you will. And once you almost get hooked on it like a drug, you can't ever lower that standard. So let's say you've got 5 mistresses going at once. It's very hard to lower that to 4 because your danger level is always, like your body needs to run it at 5.
Yeah, that becomes your normal. Yeah.
Right. But what happens is, because you're running at that 5 everywhere else, in that part of your life, his 5 mistresses push all that up. Everything else in his life can seem very plain and boring because he's calm there. Because he's got the fulfillment over here. So it's almost like having 2 sides of your personality that can balance each other out by having this danger element allows you to balance out the calmness. So as I say, danger element. So the 2 theories are, or the one of these is my pet theory that I came up with.
Okay.
So we'll go over that one second. The first one is Harold Holt faked his death so he could run off with a mistress. Now obviously he didn't run off with Marjorie Gillespie, so he's run off with one of the other ones.
Did he?
Maybe.
Where's Marjorie Gillespie now?
Yeah.
She died 2 or 3 years ago. And she wasn't.
Or did she?
Yeah, well, that's it. Maybe she went with a Chinese submarine.
Yeah.
Made of ninjas. But, yeah, so that's theory 1, is that he fakes his death. He says to his buddy, yeah, I'm going to go out for a swim. Swims around behind the rock and just hangs on there. GTA 5 style, goes into crouch, and just waits.
Till they break line of sight and then...
Yeah, his mate's gone... Well, it's been about 5 minutes, but fuck him. I mean, it's beer o'clock. I'm going home.
Goes up to 5 stars for a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Goes back down.
And then he runs out to the shore, steals a car, drives to the dot where his mistress is waiting, honks the horn. She gets in, says, "Do you want, hey cousin, you want to go bowling?" And they run off together into the sunset.
Why?
Why? Well, the theory behind this one, I think, is simply Harold Holt it was fun being Prime Minister. There's a lot of stress and pressure that goes in that job. And it's pretty clear, if you subscribe to this theory, that what he enjoyed more than Prime Ministering and lawing and whatever fucking other words I want to make up to describe this position was hunting ladies. And being a ladies' man and sex. So the prevalent theory behind this is becoming Prime Minister really cramps the style of being able to do that. So you fake your own death, fuck off somewhere else, and then you can just go on a poon parade because you're a good looking bloke.
It seems
and you
like...
just say your name is, I'm Barry Bolt.
Yeah, Barry Bolt.
So he ran off somewhere else and became Barry Bolt. Is that...
Bazza.
Yeah, Bazza Bolt.
It seems like a lot of effort to go to continue that sort of lifestyle when he only really had to wait another year and finish his term, and he could do that anyway.
Yeah.
Get a sweet retirement package out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the most logical one.
No, it seems a bit of a stretch.
Because the other thing too that I don't... Okay. Let's look at this subjectively and kind of from an investigation mindset.
Yeah.
This dude clearly liked this Marjorie Gillespie chick so much that he's like, come hang out with me while I'm with my family and we'll just go blowing around the corner. Like I said, certain level of danger this guy liked in his life. But if she means that much to you, that's the one you fake your death to run off with. That's the end of the day. You know, I mean, I know new is always better, as Barney Stinson would say, but...
I still think it's such a stretch to say that he felt so much for this person that he's willing to fake his death, leave his wife behind, leave his children behind, leave his job and whole life behind to be with this person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have to preface this with allegedly because I might be getting my facts a bit mixed up here.
That's right. We'll avoid the lawsuits that way.
Well, as I understand it, his wife had twin children from a previous marriage.
I believe that's correct, yes.
That bore a striking resemblance to Harold Holt and that were born unreasonably close to the time when they got back together.
Yeah.
to the point where you would have considered them premature babies if that was all legitimate.
Yes.
So he's leaving all that behind to fake his death and run away.
That's the theory, yeah. Now, buy it?
No.
And if he did, and say we establish this personality where he has one mistress, but then he has to have another one, and then there has to be another one, and so many women scorned over the years, but while he was in office or before he died, they remained anonymous or whatever. We only really know much about Marjorie because she was there.
Yeah.
Say he faked his death and he's run off with, Bird X, Bird Y. How long until he gets sick of her and then moves on to the next project? What is stopping that original runaway mistress with saying, hey, by the way, Harold's, he's in Cambodia, or he's in the Hutt River province, we would have, unless he's murdering, faking their deaths and actually killing them off as he gets sick of them, but there would have been sightings with Elvis and Tupac. There would have been people who say, I ran away with him.
Yeah.
But we don't even have that.
No, it's not.
I think the motive for that one's weak, and the plausibility is just very, very low.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's still a couple more to go, but we'll move on to Adam's theory for this one. All right.
Okay.
Okay. This is
Adam's theory.
This is right.
Adam's
Okay.
theory.
So as I say, let's get a title cut up. There it is. All right.
Yeah.
So this theory for me, as I say, I stepped back from this one. Okay, let's take away that he's the Prime Minister. Let's take away that he apparently drowned at sea. Let's take away all this sort of shit, right? Let's try to look at this at a logic, just from a bit of a logical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who's having one known affair. Possibly, I'm going to go with he's having one more personally. That's just my gut feeling.
For the sake of
this
theory.
This theory.
Okay.
But I don't know. There's just something. These personality types, as I say, at this time, are all very similar. They're almost cookie cutter types that get these powerful positions, and the groupie set. It's the era of groupies, realistically. So that's like I don't know whether or not it's a mistress, but I do think his wife was right as in Harold put his dick in a lot of places he probably shouldn't have. That can be a dangerous game to play if a woman's married, or if she has an older brother who's protective, or a father, or something like that. This is the 60s, okay? This is a time when it's a little bit more Old West than what it is now. And if we look at the world climate at the time, this is a time when, go off script for a little bit, my favourite ever true crime, favourite's probably the wrong term, but the most fascinating one for me, the Zodiac Killer, is going around this time, doing some pretty ridiculously open shit, writing letters, and nobody can do anything to catch him, right? And you can cover crimes really well. You've got the Bundy sprees, you've got the Manson family, you've got all this crazy shit going on. So there's a lot of murder and mayhem in the public psyche. Australia's a big place, as we've seen. Even now it's very easy to hide a body. But even easier back then. Because there's no cameras, there's no CCTV, and this is happening at night. And Harold Holt was notorious for not liking to have his bodyguards around. Particularly if he was going off to be with a mistress. Now, here's where my story, there's a little bit of speculation here, but this is what I think happened. Harold Holt went out swimming that night with his mate. And then, these are very, very close friends. This is like Harold Holt's best friend, right? And I think he's then gone, it's the 60s, remember? I'm going to go get wet in a different way down the street, right? Now, his mate isn't going to turn around and go, you cover for him no matter what, because it's your best friend, and it's the Prime Minister and all that sort of
So it's a bit of a, just tell people I was here.
Yeah. And so then he did so
Okay.
So he goes off. Or one or two things happen. He either tells me he goes off, or he does go out swimming, and like I say, he does the GTA hide thing just to duck away. I want to go off and see my mistress. And if anybody asks, Norm will just go, "You were swimming here." Then I was swimming with Norm. Ask him. Yeah, he was with me last night, because he's not thinking he's going to go missing. He gets wherever he's going, and not only is she there, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
The husband, the father, the brother, whatever.
The significant other, we'll say. Yeah.
And that's when shit gets real. Or, somehow this situation ends up, because at that time, this is the most common occurrence to happen in these sort of crimes, is that sort of shit will happen, it'll get found out, and you get killed. Now, the reason that nobody's come out about it, because he killed them both. In a moment of passion, he kills them both. You find your wife with another man, bang. That's why I don't think it's a daughter thing, it's more likely a wife thing. And you take those bodies anywhere in the bush you want to go, anywhere. Fuck, you could take them further into the sea and throw them into deeper ocean. You could get rid of them anyway. This is the 60s in Australia. But to me, I look at it just from a sheer, if it's an isolated crime, it's a guy living a slightly high risk lifestyle with a lot of who could be making enemies that he's not actually aware of. So when you take out all political machinations and everything else, because look at it from a Kennedy scenario, right? If we didn't have the Cuba shit and all the obvious implications of that, if the night before, it'd be like, the night before JFK was in Texas banging a different dude's wife who happened to own the Texas School Book Depository, you would sit back and go, I wonder if he, that's what it feels like this to me, is that I actually think Harold Holt was doing the dirty a bit too much and crossed somebody he shouldn't have crossed.
So he was murdered, but not in Portsea. He was murdered at a different location and...
Not for political reasons.
Yes. In a spur-of-the-moment crime passion that somebody has to cover up. So the only living witness is the murderer, who can't ever turn around and go, well, yeah, I killed him. Because then you go to jail forever. Because you killed the Prime Minister.
I think odds are that person... that is plausible. You can't say that didn't happen.
No, as I say, that's my pet theory. There's no evidence to it. It's just more of a case of like, well, statistically, that's the most likely, or the most likely outcome if he hasn't just simply drowned at his. Like, if he is to blame,
list,
if it's not by his hand, and by his hand I mean swimming out to sea and getting bit by a shark, is by your own hand too. You choose to be in the sea.
Yep.
If it's not by his own hand, it's. He's walked into a situation. And
the issue I have with that,
and
as you said, it's in the 60s, easy to get rid of bodies. If he went off to be with this lady, and was then discovered by this lady's husband or lover, who then murders both of them, presumably that's a fairly passionate murder.
Yeah.
It's not going to be clean or prepared. No,
it might be just big. I'm picturing guns though, because back then, rifles. One rifle.
But
if two people on top of each other, you
it,
bang, straight through two people.
Okay.
Like two people on top of each other, I'm talking.
Yeah. Alright.
But, no,
so,
keep going.
My issue, it was not a planned murder,
no.
if this is the case.
No.
It was purely
it's a crime of passion.
A crime of passion, or opportunity, or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
This person then, after just having killed the Prime Minister and another person, cleans up the crime scene, packs up some bodies.
Well, if it's in a car, where's the most likely place you're going to go for a tryst in the 60s? It's in the backseat of the car. Well, anyway, but in the 60s, if you're alive in the 60s, where's the most likely place you're going to go for a tryst? It's the backseat of a car. That's why they all got shot down in back seats back in those days. Because they weren't paid by the hour hotel rooms.
Okay, so
it's the Prime Minister.
So in the car.
So you're in the car. So all you can do is drive the car away. Drive the car off a fucking cliff, blow the car up, do something.
So you on the night that the Prime Minister of Australia has gone missing, the whole country is aware of it.
And the whole country's looking at it.
Well, it would have happened early. Did anyone know anything weird that happened that night? You could be like, I was watching. I was listening to the wireless in my front room, and I heard a car backfiring and then screeching off very quickly. Not too far away from where the Prime Minister just went missing. Wouldn't they go forward and mention that to the police?
You say
it just has a few too many leaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will give you that. I will give you that there are holes in this one. But to me, as I say, this to me is if he hasn't just died in the water through stupidity, as in like I went out with a shoulder because I'm a fucking idiot, or I got bitten by a shark, then this to me makes the most logical sense.
I mean, we can't sit here and say that didn't happen because we don't have evidence that it happened. I mean, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
No.
Like, it could have happened. And the part of your theory that, for some reason, I don't know why it didn't click to me before this, was hey Norm, just tell him I'm here with you. I'm going to disappear for a bit. That seems quite reasonable to me.
That's fine to me. In the whole story, that's the one feeling I get is that this dude's story is really weird because he's like, yeah, we were there and I watched it go and he just disappeared and then like a couple hours later I called the cops. What?
Well, he had to go back to the home, to the landline.
That's true, validate mobiles.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like that to me, that's the weirdest part. That to me more feels like a cover story of like he just the Prime Minister. Because think about it, this is the Prime. If the Prime Minister comes up and he goes, "You fucking tell him I was at your house." You do, like, it's your best mate, but he's also, like, the most powerful man in your country. You're not going to go, well, he told me to say this because he was getting his dick wet. You go, he was swimming. That's the last I saw of was he was swimming. I don't know what to tell you. He was swimming. You'll have to ask somebody else. Sorry, I've just got nothing else to say.
If you were covering for your best friend,
Yeah.
we won't say that they're the Prime Minister, but then they didn't come back.
But then how can you ever change that story?
Well, but wouldn't, like, the police are investigating. It's your friend is disappeared. They should be back by now.
Yeah, but it's
suddenly
the Prime
more
Minister.
serious. Yeah.
It's the Prime, but if it was just my mate, yeah, I could go, look guys, he asked me to cover for him, I said this. And the cops might go, it's a little, you've been misleading, perverting justice and whatever else. But if this is the fucking Prime Minister, that's a serious...
Well, what you need some sort of insight into this guy's personality to make that kind of assumption about whether he would or wouldn't hold up. I think your point is pretty reasonable as well. Like, at some point after the fact, you'd probably go, oh, actually, this is a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
But
and you guys,
you've got to also think that we are also products of a modern era where we don't see things like that as bad. These are the old school dudes who were raised in the fucking. The dude was born in 1908. Okay, so we're dealing with that school of people who you marry your wife, you stay with your wife, you never deviate, you always just stiff upper lip and all that.
And then you have sex with all these mistresses.
And so that's what I mean is that's the part you as a gentleman, you don't speak about those things. You cover for your friends. It's a gentleman. It's a very gentlemanly era. Because I think about it. Think about your grandparents. Okay.
Yeah.
And think about that era, that World War II ilk era. They're from that era where they always have each other's backs because your brother's in arms and things like that. But as I say, it's that era where you just don't talk about. It's just not discussed. It's not polite conversation. And even with police, I still think you would not want to turn around and go, well, actually, since this is going to become public record, Harold Holt just fucking, he went hog wild, mate. He was like a kid in a candy store.
Personally,
yep.
If it was with police investigation now, and that would happen, I think I would come up front pretty quick. Yeah, it wouldn't look great.
Yep.
But how good is it going to look when that's uncovered later down the track? Oh yeah, a couple of years ago when that happened.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that. As I say, there are holes in my theory. I came up with it like in the last week.
There are holes in all of these theories.
But to me, I just tried to put a bit of logical theory into it. If I'm fucking talking UFOs and submarines made of ninjas, I just wanted something that was a bit more grounded.
Yeah. Like I can see him telling his mate, "Yeah, I'm gonna go off and do something."
Yeah,
I can see that happening. Whether that was then followed up by Mr. Fredrickson killing his wife and him with a rifle in the back of the car and then disposing of the bodies in the midst of this big manhunt and not ever being any evidence of it happening, that I find a bit more of a stretch.
Completely understandable.
It's more likely than the UFO story. It's more plausible than the Chinese story, but like the UFO one, we're just drawing a very long bow.
I'm throwing darts at a wall here, I'll give you that. Alright, speaking of throwing darts at a wall, let's go with the officially most off the fucking wall one of all. And this one comes from a retired naval diver named Gary Simmons.
Okay.
Now, Gary Simmons has come out in claiming that he is responsible for the death of Harold Holt. Strap yourselves in, guys. This one is a hell of a ride.
I think I actually read a bit about this one.
So, this is Mr. Simons. I imagine it's Simmons. It's a double M. That would be Simmons, wouldn't it? This is Mr. Simmons' story. On the night before the event, so Saturday the 16th of December, as I say, this flies in the face of the fact his wife said, we were at the beach that day, but still. On the night before...
bitches be crazy,
exactly, man. On the night before, he was taken, this man who was a former, as I say, he was one of the top divers in Australia, holding records for the deepest dives of all time.
Mm-hmm.
He was taken to a location by, we'll just say an alphabet agency. I can't confirm which one, but there was an alphabet agency from a different country that took him to a location. And Manchurian Candidate style, hypnotised him and drugged him and coerced him into doing things that he only regained memory of later. Now, basically what happens when he regains these memories is, and I'll get into why he went to regain the memories in a minute because it's amazing, but what happened when he regained these memories was he remembers being taken to a house and being given something, whether it was injected or edible or whatever, being given something, then taken to a boat. And on that boat was the body still alive but paralysed due to something that injected in him of Harold Holt. And Mr. Simmons saw Harold Holt's body inside what can only be described as a body bag. The body bag was weighted, it was zipped up, Simmons was handed the bag and proceeded to do one of his dives that only he can reach because he's Australia's deepest diver, deposit the body, come back up, get on the boat, deprogrammed. Now, why, you ask yourselves, why did Mr. Simmons have recovered memories in the first place?
Did he have a book to sell?
Not yet.
Ooh.
Not yet. No, it wasn't. Not until he recovered the memories.
No, okay.
So, what happened was, as I say, his claim to fame, in case you haven't noticed, because I've mentioned it a few times, was that he was Australia's deepest diver. And then one day...
He was all existential. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man, why are we here?
I am one with the waves.
Who is the Prime Minister anyway? What does he matter?
Exactly. So around December 18th, probably the 19th, but around the 18th, just to make his story streamlined as possible, he stops being able to dive deep. And so say before he could go down, I don't know feet in terms of diving, but say before he could go down like 20,000 feet, which I imagine is pretty deep. In your
That's too far. That's not a thing.
No.
Diving...
How deep can you go? 8,000 feet?
It's not even in thousands, I don't believe.
Are we talking without...
Free diving?
Yeah, free diving.
No,
Did you have oxygen?
It was oxygen.
Okay.
It was oxygen.
Maybe 1,000 or something.
Okay, so let's say 1,000 feet.
It gets very high pressure.
Let's say, because he's the best, 1,200 feet.
Okay.
Okay? Because he's the best, he's not...
No, let's say 1,200 arbitrary depth measurements.
There we go. 1,200 arbitrary depth measurements is how far he went down. That's how far he could go down.
Yeah.
Until December 18th. When he couldn't even go as deep as his fucking 20-metre watch anymore. It's almost like he had rabies. That's how deep he could not go into this water anymore. And this was a real problem for him because he was discharged from the Navy and it kind of made him a little bit mental, obviously. And so he went to a psychiatrist and through hypnotherapy to try to work out why he suddenly had a mental barrier as to why he couldn't dive deep. They found that the alphabet agency had in fact implanted a blockage, stopping him being able to remember. He since went on to write a letter to the... who does the inquests? The coroner.
The coroner. The affidavit to the coroner.
Affidavit to the coroner, because in the meantime, which we haven't talked about, but ultimately Australia declares the guy dead. We just go, yeah, he's dead, eh?
Yeah, he gone.
He's dead. So one of the coroners at some point just signs a piece of paper, dead. Fuck it, dead. Gone.
Nobody,
so,
but he's dead.
He's dead. Can't do an inquest. Nobody, sorry, laws. So, as we say, Mr. Simmons writes a letter in that basically says, nah man, I did it and I know what happened. Now, okay, before I throw this over to you guys
I've got a few questions.
Pack of balls. There is one part of his story, or a couple of parts, but there are a couple of parts of his story that are frighteningly accurate to things that we shouldn't know. He was able to describe a boat that theoretically, that wasn't from Australia, but he knew the name and shit like that. We're talking pre-Google. So he was able to drop like down to the...
So like Yahoo or something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it was more of the Willy Wonka computer.
Jeeves.
Yeah, no, the Willy Wonka computer where you have to tell it why you'd want a lifetime supply of chocolate. That one. So anyway, so he puts it into that.
Does it make those noises?
Exactly. It did. But so he could describe the boat and the interior and shit.
So a boat.
Well, this particular model of boat. I guess.
As a diver, he has probably been on many boats over the course of his operating
in the
career.
Navy.
In the Navy.
Okay. So he was also there were certain things on the night, climate conditions, he was able to describe descriptive marks on Harold Holt's body that weren't known, like where moles were and shit, that you'd only be able to see if you had the guy lying there shirtless in front of you. Little things like that kind of I'm not like, if it's not clear, I don't agree with this one either. For the longest time I wanted to believe this because I was like, that's a good conspiracy. This was the one I wanted to be
Because it's
true.
got brainwashing.
Yeah, but after reading the guys, everything that's gone on afterwards. Now, before I throw it over to you, this is part of what I want to go back to. That right at the beginning of this episode, Andrew mentioned right off the bat, Harold Holt made a lot of enemies. The point behind what this one is, and I'll debunk it, my reason to debunk it and throw it over. Harold Holt was killed because he didn't want Pine Gap in Australia. Here's my problem with that. He loved LBJ, who was the one who wanted to put Pine Gap in Australia. Which makes me think he would have gone, how much fucking land do you want, mate? Just, the middle's there. Keep some brown people out. So, yeah, I don't hold a lot of traction with this, but the theory is basically, he said, nah, I'm not putting a base here. And the CIA went, oh, okay, can we shake hands for a minute? Oh, sorry, we injected you with my handshake injectable. Now take him out to a boat and sink him. Thanks, Gary. Hypnotise you. You can't go 10 metres anymore. You don't like water. You want to be a pilot.
His website is a fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's a fantastic mess of what a lot of extremely deep rabbit hole conspiracy websites
Black background,
end
white
up
text.
being, and unfortunately, I think it's mostly rambles. Australian our lists of our records of who has been in the army and which services during which time are quite public,
Quite comprehensive as
and
well.
quite comprehensive. And I think most of his claims of tenure don't quite match up. But then
Don't quite make the dive?
Yeah, I guess you could say that the alphabet agencies and the Australian War Records decided to remove his, but I don't know. No.
Even if he was who he said he was.
Yep.
Okay. So the only things that you pointed out that stand out there. Okay. So he knew about some moles.
Mm-hmm.
He could describe a type of boat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there were weather conditions and things like that. Like as in, he was clearly that. But if he was in the ocean that night, he was in the ocean.
Or if he was 100 meters away or 2 kilometers away, you go, oh yeah, it's pretty crap weather.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, if he was in the Navy, he would have been taught how to identify boats. He would have been on many boats. If he would have had descriptions of that's that type of boat, in case you see it, watch out, that's the Chinese or whatever. The moles? How accurate are we talking?
Well, from what I've heard, the only reason he has some sort of traction, because if you just say that, you just go, yeah, this is what I saw.
Oh yeah, I did.
On face value, you just go, huh?
You're full of shit.
But it's enough that, he's been covered by, I believe the Current Affair wants to do a piece on this thing. I know they're not the most reputable source, but
they're a pillar of
he's been given
journalistic integrity.
More made media than a lot of conspiracy theories.
Okay.
But it seems that the evidence obviously the evidence he does have, you can take it with how he got it, how you get it with a grain of salt. But it is one of those things where I don't think it's just moles and shit. It's whatever he has is evidence enough where the family have been able to say, wow, that's fronting.
I don't think it's so much evidence as it is information that he's got. I don't think it points to him being tied in with it.
The moles thing is Harold Holt was a skin diver. He did it quite often, and skin diving involves diving pretty much in your skin. He would go out in his togs, his budgie smugglers. That's it. He only had to be on the beach the same day to see some moles, or see a picture of him in the newspaper. Prime Minister swims again.
That right there is exactly my thought. When I first read it, I was like, okay, you saw a picture of him in the paper, because when we researched this, there are there are two types of photos you see of Harold Holt. Business Holt in the Prime Ministerial behind a desk, and holding his budge smugglers.
Yeah.
And that's it. Those are the two you see of him. So it's not that hard for me to believe the guy could have had newspapers on the guy. The guy's been missing all this time. Photos are printed heaps. He didn't come out till like 20-something years later, so he's had time. He came out with it when he had the internet, I guess. So we did. But it's a case of, he could have had photos that he looked at, and that's what I think too is, you can. There are certain things you can get from photos and be able to give yourself to be believable. If it had said, for instance, the last thing he ever said was Rosebud, and you get back and they're like, fuck, Rosebud is like the name of the first dog he ever had.
Yeah.
That for me, I'd go, that's a smoking gun. But just going like, I saw some shit. Where is any of you? And the reason I now can't do those dives is because they
mind smashed me.
Yeah, and if it was simply a case of if you just come out and give your theory, like I gave my theory on his murder, just gave it as a theory and that's it, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I don't seem like a nutbag for that. But if I give my theory and it's covered by 10-foot high warnings and disclaimers and basically shit written, I'm not crazy. I have one theory, and then the minute that theory gets out, I go, well, since you've listed this one theory, here's every other and I suddenly come up with 55 other fucking theories that are almost flat earth level. That's the point where you discredit yourself.
Yep.
So that's my problem with it, is that, you've got some credible aspects, but you discredit yourself on every other subject.
Yep.
So if a liar is a liar, ultimately. You can't have this one thing that is true and then build a bed of lies around it all and expect that to hold up as the truth.
Yep.
If you build a bed of lies around all of it, odds are the central point is the lie. That's why you're building this bigger and bigger web, and that's why you're going, warning, I know this is crazy, and I know you probably won't believe me, but warning, I tried to tell people, warning, because if the coroner, granted you don't want to fuck with the CIA, but if there's a chance you could find his body and just then pin it on the guy and go, nutbag was crazy, knew how to find his body, kidnapped and killed him, that's why you didn't see him, you would do that. So you would the police would have investigated this at the very least to go, where did you say you dumped him? Let's just ping it with a radar.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
And so I don't. That's where I don't buy.
It was bad weather and.
Well, they hypnotised that part.
It was dark.
Yeah, I don't remember that bit.
Exactly.
I enjoy that his narrative. He was pulled out in the middle of the night and winds up on this boat, and Harold Holt is there, but he's not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? And he's in a body bag that's weighted. Why is there a diver there?
Yeah.
And these outrageous claims. Well, they're not quite outrageous, but it's not. He's not going to just swim down there. He's going to be wearing a bathysphere suit like the style of the Big Daddies out of BioShock. It's not exactly, jogging material.
Yeah, exactly.
He would have had to be, if he was going down that deep, his suit would have had to be lowered in, with a crane. And those pictures on his website that he provides are those pictures of those equipment. And then to gently lay a still alive Harold Holt in a weighted body bag on the ocean floor to be
with digit manipulation when you don't have gloves.
There's a lot of even if there was an alphabet agency that murdered Harold Holt, why have they pulled this random guy to dispose of his body in this really specific set of ways when they've already got a boat and they've got away with the crime and they just have to push the bag?
And they probably got agents of their own who don't care about doing wet work. That's exactly it. It's a bullshit theory. It's great, but it's great for entertainment standpoint.
It seems to me like the classic conspiracy theory.
It is.
I was abducted and I was hypnotised and he was alive, and then the government said, do this. So I dived down and I put him there, and 20 years later I remembered it.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, click on my website. And,
I've got a
disclaimer.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Come to my website.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on then to probably the two most logical theories. Theory number 1. Harold Holt committed suicide. Now, not uncommon for people to drift themselves out to sea to die. In fact, it's more common on cruise ships for people to go on a cruise ship, have a really, really good time, a few drinks, have something to eat, and then just topple themselves off the side. Very common way to go. What's not common is to drown yourself in your underpants, because you won't sink as easily. So he would have gone out fully clothed, just gone fuck it. And he's made, there's not. If you pissed as a newt with your mate Norm, and I know his name's not Norm for the people at home. When you pissed,
I think they would have got that by now.
you know, Norm's, you both 6 days to Sunday, right? So, you would just be pissed. Oh, I was going to have my clothes. Oh, fucking Harry at it again, you larrikin. Get in here. And then he disappears. Logic. But you don't go, well, let me put on my perfect shoes for this, and because I'm a perfect swimmer, I'll put on the exact things I need to do this, and drown myself. That doesn't make sense to me. That's like I'm gonna hang myself. Let me first of all go out and get a manicure, get my hair done, get my best tux pressed, put my tux on, and then hang myself on my tux.
This is a tricky one to discuss because obviously you're talking about the psychology of suicide.
Yeah.
And
sorry, just to interject, the one thing I will give you before you go into psychology, according to all reports of people who knew him before the event and his wife on the day, Harold Holt, 1, too happy to commit suicide, and the direct quote from her, he is too selfish to commit suicide. Now please continue.
Well, if we're talking about suicide, then, you know, disclaimer to anyone watching or listening, this can get a bit dark. We've been pretty lighthearted up until now.
That's why I saved this stuff for the end, so
but
we can build to it.
Okay, so I may have misheard you when you were describing going out getting a manicure and a tux to hang yourself. Are you saying that's not likely, or that is likely?
That's not as likely to do. For a man. For
a lot of people, that's incorrect.
Okay.
If they're going out, they often end up in very good spirits by people that have seen them in the days leading up. But he was so happy, he was so relaxed. I had a drink with him the day before, everything was fine. And then that tends to be to happen as reports go by, because they've made the decision.
Yeah.
They don't have the stress anymore. They don't have the worries.
That's exactly
the
psychological report, yeah. The stress is gone because you already know you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah, you go, I've made up my mind. It's going to happen.
Having a last night with your friends.
Yeah.
That's the cruise, like I said, that's the cruise ship thing of they get on the cruise ship, they have an amazing few days of drinking and feasting and just go
Great way to go out.
Yeah, go on a really high note.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so there's that. So maybe he did do it. The fact they said he was too happy to do it doesn't mean shit.
I know, I agree with them that. Yeah. But the selfish thing is where I know suicide is the most selfish act you can do. But I think what she's trying to say is, to Harold Holt was the most important thing in the universe. And Harold Holt would not hurt Harold Holt.
Yeah. I don't think he did either. No. I think I need to be clear on that. But I think the justifications for him not doing that, if we're talking about this in a reasonable way, I think that's where we need to spend a bit of time. Yeah. Would you agree with what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that if he did decide to kill himself, he's the Prime Minister of Australia, he could do it any different way, you know.
But why?
Why did he go out for a swim and just keep swimming until he couldn't swim anymore?
I guess being
how far out can you get?
If you enjoy swimming, if you do swimming like he did, that is a good way to go. But if you're an egotistical braggart like he also seems to be, wouldn't you want a body to be there?
I think that's
because he doesn't seem like the personality type who wasn't a pride. He had pride. He was a very prideful man.
He craved attention, and by some reports I've read, he was despite being a philanderer, he was also a bit of a lonely person. He needed that
attention and gratification.
The gratification. I think he needed that people around him.
Yeah.
Say, oh, good on you, hey. Not that's a bad trait, but
if he was going to commit suicide, wouldn't he want to at least leave?
He would leave a note, I would say.
That's where the suicide one, or as I say, at the very least, he would have. The last words to Norm would have reported back being like, "Yeah, it's normal." It's just, the last one was like, "Well, mate, it's been real," or something. You know, you don't just go like that. Just to get real for a minute, my cousin committed suicide. He just been accepted to a New York Art Academy. Literally had everything going in the world for him. The night before he went out to a pool hall with his friends who all said the same thing that you said. Best spirits I've ever seen him. Can't believe it. So happy. as often happens, right? But what was brewing beneath the surface was obviously something very different. But when the last person he saw on that night, he actually said something really heartfelt to him. And it was the first time he really opened up to this person, but it was something along the lines of, I just really wanted to thank you for all the friendship we had. Like, it's really meant a lot to me. And this guy just thought it was that we've just become closer friends, and he was just kind of like, you know what, man, I'm leaving in like a week or so, and I just really wanted to say thanks for being there for me. But it was that, I guess, saying that when he looked back on it the next day, when he heard the news, he was like, fuck. And for me, I unfortunately was at work the night he went out, and got home to a message saying, call Brooke. And I was like, I'll call him in the morning. Like, it was like fucking, I just finished night shifts, so it was like 2 a.m. I'm like, he's not gonna be up. It's like Wednesday night.
Yep.
Very similar situation for myself,
And so obviously couldn't call him the next morning, but it was one of the things I look at it and I'm like, and the logic in me went, he and I never talked on the phone. We both weren't phone people, but my brain wasn't thinking that way at the time because you don't think anything's wrong. So for him to have actually called me is a thing where it's like, man, he was reaching out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm not seeing here, is there doesn't seem to be anywhere that Harold Holt is reaching out to anybody. And you do suicide still, even if you've decided to do it, you still reach out at a certain level. So that to me is just...
Yeah, I think there would have been, if it was suicide, there would have been some sort of note or last hurrah or something to mark the day.
Yeah, a big bash or something to
set
himself off on. So.
Was at the beach with his family?
He had a picnic, shagged his mistress, went out for a street. Seems like pretty much a regular Sunday or Saturday, whatever day it was, to Harold. Alright, let's move on then to the final theory. Harold Holt just fucking drowned.
Just drowned.
Just drowned.
The only real input I've got for this theory, I understand he's a reasonably strong swimmer, had a bit of a dicky shoulder, nothing that out of the ordinary. The one that came up when I was looking into this were people talking about the seagrass in the area being quite long, and the tide. I haven't checked personally where the tides were at the time that he went missing.
Yep.
But one explanation as to why his body didn't turn up when he drowned was that as the tide went out, he became tangled in some seagrass, didn't come back up, stayed there. That's why the body didn't float up.
How deep's this seagrass?
Well, it's fairly deep.
Deep enough that a search team wouldn't find it?
Well, that's the key thing here. I would have assumed that a search team would have found this, but there's a lot of things that we're talking about today that I would have assumed.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel this. It makes sense that maybe the seagrass was part of why he drowned as a strong swimmer. That he may...
If you get tangled in it, like if you're underwater and get tangled, the more you struggle, the more oxygen you use quicker.
That's it. So it could have been a contributing factor. It might not have been a solely deciding factor as, hey, seagrass equals dead Prime Minister. But gets tangled in the seagrass. Drowns. Eaten by crabs and sharks and stuff. The time frames for how long it takes a body to be eaten, I think, don't really match up. But again, it's not unreasonable.
I think he drowned. I think he drowned for a lot of different reasons, and that there's a lot of. I guess we don't have any categorical evidence for any of these theories, but this is the one where Occam's razor kind of cuts true. He wasn't the first person to die at Portsea.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't the last person to die, unfortunately. He was a strong skin swimmer and has been doing that for a long time. But he was 69, and
with a dodgy shoulder.
And there's you've brought along, Matt, Tom Frame's great book, The Life and Death of Harold Holt, which talks about There's a moment earlier in the year or the previous year where the Liberal Party felt that he may have had a stroke during a Parliament session.
Oh, I remember about it, yeah.
There was 2 previous instances where he'd gone skin swimming in the same year and come into trouble, including one where he possibly ingested seawater through his snorkel, had to come in and vomited quite severely. He had a bad shoulder, which was well documented. He had a morphine subscription, and Frame suggests that he possibly had a second morphine prescription from a different doctor as
Would
well.
not surprise me at the time with the amount of morphine addiction. Just to sidetrack, Kennedy himself, morphine addict.
Yeah, so he's medicating himself for his shoulder.
And for his pleasure.
He's an aging man who is trying to continually do things that he knows he can do, but all of a sudden his body can't do what his mind wants. And then if you look at the fact sheets, particularly for Australian drowning over 100 years, he ticks almost every single box. 80% of Australian drowning victims are male. Harold Holt was a male.
And he was Australian.
He was Australian.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy. A majority of drowning deaths in Australia are between the 45 and 55 bracket. He was just outside of that, but that tends to be the group of people, of men who are still, I can still swim, and they have a couple of drinks and they overexert themselves and run into trouble. Most of them die within 100 kilometres of where they live, which is what he did. He died in Victoria, but most people, this is a really long bow, but most drowning victims are actually from New South Wales. But they don't always die in New South Wales. That's why New South Wales, learn how to swim, come on. Most people die on inland waters. He wasn't inland, he was out to sea. But almost a third of all drownings include alcohol consumption and or other intoxication. So we know they'd had a picnic, they'd had a few to drink.
He's on morphine as well.
He was allegedly, most likely.
If you've got a prescription in your dodgy shoulder, you're
dealing with pain medication,
which doesn't mix well with alcohol.
An Aussie bloke who is out there doing what he thinks he still can do, suddenly can't. And when we say skin diving, he doesn't have like a scuba tank on his back. He's got a mask and a snorkel. It's not going to take much for him to come across. I really, as much as I want to believe like the Chinese story or think that there was like some nefarious plot based on his policies or the fear of the Reds or anything at the time, I think he drowned.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good enough. I was just about to say, let's just totally let's lay all our cards out. So you're going first. You think he drowned?
I think he was drowned. Possibly, maybe came a cropper with a shark or something that he couldn't recover from and then drowned, or a combination of those two. But I don't think there was anything. There was any man-made interference. I think it was he naturally drowned, or
he died of his own hand, basically, but not through his own choice. But he died of his own hand. Matt, what do you got?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think as fun as it is to come up with ideas of pygmy submarines, defecting to China to report to the national communist parties over there, whether the alphabet agencies have come and said, hey, we want to build a clandestine type radar station in your country.
We're getting there, so.
As much as that's fun to talk about, I think, like you said, Occam's razor just comes down to it with this. It's just far more plausible and reasonable to assume that a man of his age went for a swim through ill health or a shark attack or something, just drowned. Had a stroke while they were swimming.
Yeah.
Maybe became confused and swam out further than he should have, which is why the tides didn't bring him back in.
And it's a really boring way into the Prime Minister's death.
Yeah.
But it makes a much better mystery than it does a
Yeah.
solvable answer.
How about yourself?
Well, as we've been through a lot of things. We've been through sharks, UFOs, blokes depositing him on the ocean floor and then not being able to dive deep anymore.
Gary.
We've been through affairs, possibly being murdered by a spouse or a brother or something. Ultimately, though, what do I think happened to him? I think Harold Holt got super drunk earlier in the day. I think his pain medication combined with that actually made him lethargic and meant his muscles didn't move as well as he thought they did. But the reason they didn't find his body, in my opinion, is because he swam out into some sort of swell or riptide and got blown the other way. Earlier I made that joke about
Left
one
instead
shark
of
went
right.
left and one
Yeah.
shark went right. I think that's what happened here, is that his body went out to something because of an atmospheric condition caused a rip or a swell somewhere. He blew him that direction because it was a bad night. Well, not a massively bad night, but it wasn't the greatest night of the sea.
No.
All it takes is one day of getting blown that way. You hit another one because the storm moves. If you're moving with the storm and getting pushed with the storm, you're going to go out. But if you get blown a few different ways, you're going to be completely off the search grid. But as my argument right from the beginning, in case you haven't noticed, well, where is he? If he's not in deep water, where is he? He's in deep water. He ended up in deep water. That's the only way he didn't get washed back. And ultimately, looking at that area he's in and the riptides and the swells that go through it, I think he got blown way further than he thought. Maybe he actually did get blown into fucking Port Phillip Bay, for all we know. It's possible, it's plausible. No submarine waiting there for him, but I personally think he got swept way far out to sea, and that's why we can't find anything, because one day we may find the shoes at the base of the ocean when we can finally go down that deep.
If they haven't been picked up and ended up in landfill already, or fished out of the ocean by a cartoon character.
Exactly. But yeah, that's my theory, is that, yeah, he drowned. He drowned because he overexerted himself when he had morphine in his system, because, let's face it, that's heroin. It's a relaxative, but it also makes you feel really good and think you're indestructible if you've been taking it for a long amount of time. Which I'm willing to bet he had been, because the shoulder wasn't exactly, I heard it yesterday. And so I think he basically drugged and drunk himself too much. It was the 60s after all, that's what people did. And yeah, I think his friend was right. I honestly think when Norm said, I watched him go out, I watched him go behind something, and that was it. I reckon he went behind, hit a rip, got pulled down into it, and did get flushed out. He may have got flushed out over a kilometre or two away. But that's my theory on where he is. So either or, we all came down to the same thing. Harold Holt did just fucking drown.
And if there's any other Harold Holt conspiracy theories that we didn't cover,
Yeah, leave them below in the comments.
yeah. I did want to just briefly touch. I was probably going to sidetrack backwards a bit, but so I was talking to someone about Harold Holt, and they said, "Where was the security? Where was the security? Where were the bodyguards? Where was?" As Australians, our prime ministers, we haven't had any of them assassinated yet. Our bodyguard detail that follows most of our prime ministers isn't known for being particularly great. I remember not that long ago, John Howard going for a run along the docks of Sydney, and he was running along the riverfront, and there was some boys from the local school fixing their canoe for the day, or their rower, and one of the boys came up with a screwdriver and gave John Howard a hug. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, it was on the chaser and everything, yeah. And the security just didn't, they were just like, yeah, fair enough.
And then in retrospect, it was a huge deal. Like, that was a weapon.
Yeah.
There was nothing stopping that kid from stabbing poor John in the neck. It didn't happen. And we don't have this mentality that our politicians are in danger. And there was no security because they didn't need to be.
I could give some insight on another day. I won't go into it in that deep now, but I have spoken with people that have worked for security for heads of state, ambassadors from significant countries, and back in the 60s and 70s at least, it wasn't that big a deal.
No.
Well, the other thing too is, as I say, he was notorious for. It's still the 60s and the 70s. Like, granted, it's a lower time, but it's still a time where tabloids and all that shit's really starting to just take off. Okay, what's the easiest way to tail the Prime Minister if he's got a gaggle of like 3 or 4 cars behind him? You just go, there he is.
Yeah.
But if he goes, look, I want to go get my end away with Curly Sue and nobody needs to know about it, just don't fuck off for the night so I can drive myself. Like I say, that's your boss.
Yeah.
If your boss says, hang back 150 feet, you hang back 150 feet.
Yeah.
And you don't talk about it afterwards. But that from what I have read and from what his wife has said, yeah, he was notorious for just going, oh, you guys can go home. Because then he could run around and do whatever he wanted, and if anybody asked, was the Prime Minister where he was meant to be last night? Yeah. Plausible deniability all the way.
Last time I saw him, he was.
Yeah, exactly. Right back to Norm. Norm knows more than he's letting on, I'm telling you.
I think he was drowning in pussy and then he just drowned.
And on that note, I think that's where we'll wrap up the Harold Holt episode of the Cabana Conspiracy Club. If you at home have any conspiracies from Australia you'd like us to look into, please leave them in the comments section below so we can get into that. Otherwise, I've been Adam.
I'm Matt.
I'm Andrew.
And we'll see you next time on the Cabana Conspiracy Club.
This has been a Cabana production.